Hey, what is going on guys? RvzStealth here, and in today's video, I'm going to be giving you guys my opinion on the best underrated champions right now for solo queue. So there were three things I took into consideration when making this video. The first one being the champion had to have over a 50% win rate. They also needed to have below a 5% pick rate, and they also needed to be strong in my opinion, of course. So with that being said guys, let's get into the video. First on my list for top lane is Kayle. So right now, I think that Kayle is a pretty strong pick for solo queue just because we are still seeing a lot of assassins being played in both the mid lane and in the jungle. She's also a very strong laning champion in the top lane. We're seeing a lot of melee picks being played right now for top, so Kayle can just easily farm up in the laning phase in those matchups, and if she is in a favorable matchup, she can even pick up some kills in the laning phase. Her ultimate is a very strong team fighting ability. If you can place that on your teammates in the right situation, it can just easily win your team the team fight, and it's just a really game-changing ability if it can be used correctly. Her sticking power is also quite good because she's got the slow on her Q. Her split pushing ability is also some of the best in the game. If you do get ahead with Kayle and you get some items, then you can look to split push really easily because she does get a lot of attack speed, and she can just tear down those towers pretty quickly. She also does have the heal on her W, so that just allows her to keep her teammates nice and healthy in those mid to late game team fights, and her single target damage is some of the best for any champion in the game, especially once you do get to late game Kayle. A few cons to Kayle though are that she is pretty squishy, so if your team is lacking a tanky champion, then I wouldn't pick Kayle in that situation, and she is also pretty weak if she does fall behind. She doesn't do a lot of damage unless she does have her items. Next up for jungle, I have Skarner. So right now Skarner is sitting at around a 53% win rate. However, he's only picked around 1% of the time, which is pretty crazy because at the start of the season, or maybe it wasn't at the start of the season, it was a while back, Skarner had one of the highest pick rates in the game and he was like one of the most OP junglers, but he's fallen off quite a bit in popularity, and I do still think he is actually pretty good though. His level 6 ganks are some of the best in the game. He basically gets a free kill at level 6 as long as he can get his ultimate off on the champion that he's ganking. He's got pretty strong CC too with his E. His E allows him to get the slow, and then it also stuns the target if you auto attack them after you land your E, so his CC is actually quite good in my opinion. He does have his shield, which allows him to stay pretty healthy in the jungle, and it also does give him the speed boost as well, so it just allows him to move around the map pretty quickly, and it allows him to engage on his targets. He does have pretty good clear speeds in the jungle as well, since he does have the AoE damage coming out of his E and his Q. A few cons to Skarner though, or one con to Skarner, is that he is countered by disengage, so if the enemy first picks Janna or if they first pick Gragas, then picking Skarner in that situation probably isn't the best idea. Next up for mid lane, I have Morgana. So Morgana is a really good pick if the enemy team does have a heavy CC comp, or if they do lock an AP mid laner. I would definitely recommend picking Morg in that situation. Unless you are really confident on your Morg though, I wouldn't pick her if the enemy team does lock someone like a Talon or a Zed or an AD assassin in the mid lane. She's got really good burst damage, and her pick potential is some of the best for any champion in the game, since her Q is a very long range CC ability. It's like a 2 or 3 second snare, so if you can land that on the enemy mid laner or AD carry in a team fight, the amount of damage you can follow up with is quite good. And if you do see the enemy team grouped up in a team fight or before a team fight starts, what you can do as Morg is you can flash ult in, and the amount of damage you can get off with your ultimate is really good. So once you do have your Zhonya's as Morg, then definitely look for those flash engages because it can definitely catch the enemies off guard, and you can get a lot of damage off by doing that. She is also great at shoving waves because of her W, so when you are playing as Morgana, if you're up against someone who CS is really bad under tower in the early game, then definitely look to shove them under tower with your W because it's just really easy to do so, and you're going to deny the enemy a lot of CS in the early game. A few cons to Morg though is that she does not have a gap closer, so you do have to be somewhat careful in the early game. She is a little bit safer than some of the other non-gap closer mid laners since she does have her black shield and she can negate the enemy's CC, but just make sure if you are pushing up all the way that you do get some wards down. And she isn't the best against AD assassins. If you are a strong Morgana player though and you're confident on your Morg, then you can still do well if you do rush a Zhonya's against those AD assassins, but if you want to be safe, then pick someone else in the situation when you are going up against an AD assassin. Next up for AD carry, I have Graves. So right now, Graves is actually sitting at the highest win rate for any AD carry in the game at 55%. However, he's only picked 4% of the time, so if you have not picked Graves AD carry this patch, I would definitely recommend trying it out. He's got really good burst damage, especially once he does hit level 6. If you pair him up with a strong engaged CC support, someone like a Leona or Morgana, or someone who can lock down the enemy AD carry, then Graves can follow that up with a lot of burst damage, so you can definitely get a good snowball going in the early game with Graves. He's pretty strong at all stages of the game too. His early game is great, his mid game is pretty good, and then his late game is absolutely crazy. His W also is really good now because it completely blinds the enemy, so if you can place that in the correct position when you are dueling the enemy AD carry or when you are going for an all-in the laning phase, then you can definitely easily end up winning that trade. And one con to Graves though is that he is a shorter ranged AD carry. And lastly for support, I have Zyra. So right now Zyra is only sitting at a 2% pick rate. I haven't seen a Zyra myself in solo queue, I don't think in the past 2 to 3 months, so she is definitely very underrated right now. She's got really good damage for a support, so if your team is lacking damage, then I would recommend picking her in that situation. Her Q, her E, and her ultimate they're all damaging abilities, so she can definitely put out quite a bit in team fights. Her CC is also quite good with her E and her ultimate. Her disengage is actually some of the best in the game too, next to Janna in my opinion. If the enemy team does lock Janna, or if you don't feel like playing Janna, or if you want a damage version of Janna, then I would pick Zyra in that situation. Her ultimate just allows her to zone the enemies off of her backline really easily, and if the enemy team does try to engage on your AD carry, then you can just throw your ultimate down and they'll be knocked up and then your AD carry can escape. So her disengage is definitely very underrated in my opinion. A few cons to Zyra though are that she is a pretty squishy champion, so you do have to be careful in the laning phase that you aren't getting caught out by a Blitz Hook or a Morgana binding, and she is a little bit harder to play as well compared to some of the other supports since she is pretty skill shot reliant and her ultimate does have a delay on it, so you do have to be careful about where you're placing your ultimate as Zyra in a team fight since the enemies can just easily flash out of it, and they can, if you don't place it in the right spot, then they could just walk away from it. So I do think she is a bit harder to play than some of the other supports. So for the top lane honorable mention, I have Sion. Sion is a really good tank CC champion. He's sitting at around a 53% win rate right now for top lane, so if your team is lacking a strong CC tank, then I would pick Sion in that situation. Next up for jungle, I have Quinn. So Quinn is actually quite underrated in the jungle since she does have her Q, which blinds the minions and it allows her to take a lot less damage in the jungle. She also can clear the jungle quite quickly since her Q is an AoE ability. Once she does hit level 6, her ganks are really good since she does have her ultimate, which provides really strong movement speed, so she can just easily bypass wards and get a lot of good ganks off once she does hit level 6. For mid lane, I have Corki. So in my opinion, mid lane Corki is better than AD carry Corki. The reasoning behind this is because mid lane Corki will hit his level 11 power spike faster than bot lane Corki, and mid lane Corki also can utilize his package a lot better. When you are playing bot lane Corki, then you can't really go for roams with your package. I mean, you can, but if you go for a roam top lane when you are playing AD carry Corki, you're probably going to lose a lot of CS bot and you might even lose your tower. Whereas if you're playing mid lane Corki, then you can go for roams bot, you can go for roams top, and you can take advantage of your package a lot more. So I think that mid lane Corki is pretty underrated, and I would play it for sure if you have not yet this patch. The honorable mention for AD carry is going to be Twitch. So Twitch is a really good mid to late game AD carry. He isn't the best in the early game though, and he can definitely get bullied out by some of the other AD carries in the game. As long as you can just farm up in the laning phase as Twitch and go even with the enemy AD carry though, then your teamfight presence in mid to late game is going to be really good, and you can just stay really safe in teamfights with your long range from your ultimate and get a lot of damage off. When you are playing him though, you do have to be careful about your positioning since he is in a mobile AD carry. He does not have a gap closer, so if the enemies do have someone like a Zed or someone like a Talon, then I wouldn't pick him in that situation, and if they do have a strong CC comp, then I would definitely recommend buying a QSS as your third item. And to round out the honorable mentions, my support pick is going to be Zilean. So the reason I think Zilean is pretty underrated in this meta is because we are seeing a lot of assassins being played, and Zilean does a good job at countering those assassins due to his ultimate. He can just easily keep his mid laner or his AD carry alive in team fights with his ult. He's also got pretty good poke with his Q, and his CC that he can get off if he does land the double Q is quite good. The slow that he does have on his E is also pretty insane. Like, he does a really good job against any immobile champions or any champions that don't have gap closers like Volibear. He's also pretty good against Udyr since he can slow him down quite a bit. So if you haven't played Zilean this patch, I would recommend trying him out. So that is going to be all for the video, guys. If you did enjoy, then don't forget to drop a like, subscribe if you have not already. So thanks for watching, guys. Have an awesome day, and I will see you in my next video.